Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to stick to Sweden and we're going to return to a brewery that has now featured on the channel a good number of times before. So I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the last couple of years. I would say this brewery are known mainly for their New England hazy IPAs and also their big fruity juicy sours, the Berliner Weisses and Goses and things like this. And if you are interested in those kinds of beer, then I would highly recommend that you check these guys out. One of the best breweries in Sweden in these particular styles at the moment, in my opinion. But the one that we're going to have a look at today is a style that I've not had from these guys before. It's a style that I've been getting really into again over the last couple of years as well. So I have to say I'm very curious to see how this brewery's take on it comes across. So looking forward to this one. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head up towards Gothenburg once again. Göteborg, as you would say in Swedish, the Swedish craft beer capital up there on the west coast. Got to get that catchphrase in when we're doing the Gothenburg beers because it is just channel tradition these days. And for this review then, we are going to return to Duckpond Brewing. So this particular beer is called the Lipizzaner Pilsner. It comes in at 5% ABV, or 5.1% ABV, I'm sorry. And I think you know what style this one is. So yeah, this is my first lager beer of any description from Duckpond Brewing. And this, I wonder, it could well be the first one that they've released through Systembolaget actually. But this particular beer was released as part of the Lokal och Småskalig assortment through Systembolaget here in Sweden for August of 2021. So yeah, very much looking forward to this one. Hopefully it's another good beer, as I said, but let's crack on and see how we go. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Duckpond Brewing before, and you will no doubt see me add more to that list in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is massively appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then to tell you a little bit about Duckpond Brewing once again. So, Duckpond Brewing, as I've told you before, was previously known as Mikrofon, and this is the brainchild of Nikola Sarcevic, who is a singer and songwriter for the band Millencolin, which has been making music since 1993. But the band was originally based in Örebro, out to the west of Stockholm, but then they took a break, and at this point Nikola moved over to Gothenburg. But in 2013 he began homebrewing with his friend Christian Silva while he was studying international marketing in Skövde, and the two were brewing just very small 20-litre batches together. And then Nikola decided that he enjoyed this and he wanted to take it further, so he went down to Berlin in Germany for a 2-week brewing course, and then the two after this began brewing much larger batches. The brewery was based for a time in Nikola's house, and at this stage they were brewing 200-litre batches, but they changed their name in the summer of 2019 from Mikrofon to Duckpond Brewing. They wanted to anglicise the name because they felt this would help them get a little bit more recognition and drive the sales of the brewery a little bit more, and it certainly has done that, because Mikrofon is probably quite a difficult name for non-Swedish speakers to either, well, maybe not to understand, but to spell and things like that. So they changed it to Duckpond Brewing, and things have been going very well for them. But in 2019, the year when they changed their name, they produced around 70,000 litres, and these guys are also one of the co-owners of the Wizard Brewing brand, along with Morgendagens, who are another very good sour beer brewery up in Gothenburg. But originally they were producing most of their beers at Popels in Jonsered and Odd Island, which I believe were based in Mölndal at the time, but these days they've got their own premises in Kungston, and they've also just hired Magnus Laurén as their new brewer. And as of August 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 40 different kinds of beer under the Duckpond name, and I believe there were about 20 had previously been released under the Mikrofon name. So yeah, I'm not sure if some of those have been sort of renamed and re-released or whatever, but yeah, these guys release, you know, 1 or 2 new beers beers every month through Systembolaget. So they are quite a prolific brewery. In fact, there's at least one new beer released from these guys every month. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Duckpond Brewing for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can of course check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, that is it for your history section. Let's crack on and look at the beer itself. So just a little quick look at the artwork on this one before we open it up. As you can see, there is the Lipizzan horse on the front of it. I did look up what Lipizzaner was before I did the video because I was just curious. But yeah, the Lipizzaner is a type of horse that was associated with the Vienna Royal Riding School in Austria, and it was associated with the Habsburg monarchy as well, monarchy as well. So you know, that was Archduke Franz Ferdinand and things like that, the one who was killed by Gavrilo Princip in Sarajevo, and that of course set off the First World War in Europe, or well, it was the kind of spark that lit the fire almost. But yeah, the Lipizzaner Pilsner. I don't know exactly why they've chosen this name for it, but yeah, it is pretty cool. And that is a little explanation of what a Lipizzan is. So yeah, 440 milliliter can. This one I paid 30 Swedish kroner for this, so that translates to €3, about £2. What would we say? About £2.50 sterling, something like that. And I guess somewhere in the region of like $3.50, $3.75 American for those of you watching over there. But yeah, 440 milliliter can, 5.1% ABV. Let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting. My first lager beer of any description from Duckpond Brewing. Now, as I've told you in many videos, definition of a lager beer is a cold temperature fermentation, bottom fermenting yeast. The fermentation takes place between about 8 to 12 degrees Celsius, whereas with ales it's top fermenting yeast, and the fermentation will take place between about 15 to 18 degrees Celsius. So yeah, that is your basic definition of a lager beer. There's many different kinds of lager beers, of course. You know, in Germany you've got the Helles, the Dunkel, the Schwarzbier, the Box, things like this. In the Czech Republic you've got the Svetli, Leitsak, Cherny, Tmavis. And of course you've got Pilsners, you've got Vienna lagers. These are all different types of lager beer, of course. So yeah, cold temperature fermentation, that is basically it. But anyway, as you can see with this one, when we poured the beer, it poured with about somewhere between 1/4 and 1/3 finger of a frothy, I would say perfect white head. It has faded away to just be a very, very kind of thin, wispy and foamy layer, but there's a nice little bit of a ring just around the edge of the glass. And you can see the colour of this one, it is quite a hazy Pilsner, so I do wonder if this will be more along the lines of a Czech Pilsner rather than a German, a Czech Pilsen I should say, rather than a German Pilsner. Now the story of the Pils, I've been over this quite a lot in videos recently as well, but anyway, the story of the Pilsner beer. So this style of beer originates in the Czech city of Pilsen. The German name of course for the city was Pilsner, or things coming from the city were called Pilsner. But yeah, this style was developed sometime, I want to say, in the 1840s. The original Pilsner, of course, is Pilsner Urquell, which is a lovely beer. That's one of my kind of go-tos. I absolutely love that stuff. But yeah, it originated in that city. It was created, though, by a Bavarian brewer who came there. He wasn't a very nice man. He was kicked out of the city again about 2 years later. But of course, it's now the most popular style of beer in the world. But I guess maybe the connection to the Lipizzaner horse is the fact that the Czech Republic, what is now the Czech Republic, used to be part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And the city, of course, Moravia, was pretty much half German, half Czech, if you like. There was people of both ethnicities, I guess you could say, living there, because the city of Pilsen was basically a dual language city at that time. So yeah, they all lived together and they got on, and then the communists came later, and that apparently was what stopped a lot of it. The ethnic Germans were kind of kicked out and put into Germany by the communists. But yeah, that is I guess probably what the connection is, you know, being part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and there's your connection to the Habsburg monarchy. Why do I keep doing that? Having brain farts in the videos all the time these days, guys. I'm getting old. But yeah, as you can see in terms of colour, lovely hazy bright yellow, this one. And the reason I was talking about the Czech Republic there, of course, to tell you the origin of it, the Czech Pilsners tend to be the ones that are more hazy. Czech lagers tend to be a little bit more kind of hazy and sort of yeasty leaning, whereas the German ones tend to be a little bit cleaner and crisper in my experience. So yeah, this one with the haze, I do think, and the name is most likely to be based on the Czech variant, if we can call it that. But yeah, it certainly looks the part. Lovely, very bright, rich yellow colour to this one. A little bit of natural haze to it, I think. But it looks absolutely great. Nothing surprising about the appearance of this beer, I would say, when you consider what style it is. So let's take a closer look at the aroma and just see how we get on there. I'm really looking forward to this. So yeah, that smells very, very nice. Yeah, the aroma of this beer is pretty authentic, actually. It does come across very, very nicely. So yeah, and that's what I look for in these lager beers. As I always tell you in these reviews, when it comes to, you know, Helles and Dunkel and Pilsners and all of this, I want them to be authentic. I want them to be like the ones that you're going to find in Germany and the Czech Republic and so on. And just from the aroma, I think this one is going to be, it smells like it's going to be pretty spot on, but it certainly smells a little bit more kind of yeasty and bready. It certainly smells a little bit more yeasty and bready, I think. So that to me indicates that it's a Czech, that it is a Czech Pilsen rather than a German Pilsner, if that makes sense. If it's a German one, it would be a little bit kind of more crisp and dry, I would say. But yeah, let's try and break down the aroma of this for you properly and describe it. So the backbone of the beer, you can smell that lovely kind of soft white bready character to this one. That goes right across. The kind of the nose there, and that is the backbone, a soft white bready character. There's a little bit of a fluffy white bready note to it and some nice kind of floury bread crusty character. You can smell it, almost smells like that fresh kind of floury, that sort of fresh flour sort of thing that you get kind of underneath the, you know, if you've got a fresh hedgehog roll or something, you've still got a wee bit of flour in the bread crust. That's what you get out of this beer. So lovely kind of soft, slightly floury white bready character. That's the backbone of this one. You do get a few little bread crusty elements out of this one, which I do certainly like. But yeah, it goes together really nicely in that sense. So yeah, I think it's very straight shooting, I think, in the middle of the nose. And the Pilsners tend to be soft white bread in there, a little bit of bread crust, maybe one or two little crackery elements like a Jacob's cream cracker, but you get a little touch of sweetness in there. You can smell a wee bit of a McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing to this one, and you can certainly smell a little bit of the crispness of the Pilsner malt in there, but the smoothness that you get out of that is quite a smooth crispness, if that makes sense. It makes me wonder if they're using, you know, the Viking Swedish Pilsner malt, actually, because the Viking Swedish Pilsner malt that I've had in other beers, it tends to just be that little bit softer. So I really like how this one goes together. I do like how this one goes together in that sense. So yeah, aroma wise, this is very, very nice actually. So yep, aroma wise, it's absolutely spot on, I think, in terms of the nose. Certainly a more yeasty element to it. You can smell some of the more yeasty notes, and there's a little touch of bitiness in the back of the nose as well. So from the malty perspective, this one is very akin to what you'd find in the Czech Pilsen beers. So yeah, it's a thumbs up from me in that regard. But other than, you know, breadiness, a little bit of bread crust, and maybe a bit of cracker, a bit of a kind of crisp Pilsner malty character and some sweet sort of biscuity notes, I think there's not really much else to kind of say about this one, to be honest with you. So on the hoppy side of things, what would we say? On the hoppy side of things, for me, again, it's pretty authentic. So it's hard to distinguish. I think it probably has got some Czech Sats in it actually, because you can smell a bit of that kind of floral spiciness in there. These noble hops all have quite similar aromas to them, but they're quite subtle in many ways too. But certainly you get a little touch of earthiness out of this one. You can smell a wee bit of a smooth herbal character, but you've got a good little bit of floral aromaticity, and also a good wee bit of a, you've got a good bit of a kind of big, kind of spicy floral aromatic note. So I really like how that goes together. Yeah, I think the noble hops in this one are definitely Czech. I think you can smell a wee bit of that spiciness, the kind of distinctive thing. I've always found that the German ones are quite bright in terms of their floral notes, and the Slovenian ones tend to be a little bit more kind of smooth in a sense. But yeah, this one's certainly got a little bit of that more kind of slightly spicy note to it, I would say, which I would associate with the Czech Sats. There are other types of Czech hops, of course, but the Czech Sats, or Žatec as they call it, is the most well-known one. But yeah, lovely big kind of floral note to it, a little bit spicy as we say, but big and aromatic. Then at the front of the nose, you certainly get a little bit of that lighter kind of grassy note out of it, and it's quite a wet, leafy, grassy character you get out of this one, I would say. But on the fruity side of things, the beer is what you'd expect. There's maybe a little touch of like dried apricot in there, maybe some kind of, you know, sultana, raisiny notes, but you've also got, as they say, you've also got a more, I think, you know, you've also got a more kind of oily pear and a little bit of a kind of spicy appley sort of thing in there as well, and these are quite common things that you can get out of the aroma of Pilsner beers. So for me, the aroma of this one, I'd say, yeah, apricot and sultana in the back of the fruits, and a little bit of a more oily pear and brighter kind of grassy quality. So yeah, I do like how that goes together in this one. So yeah, the fruity side of this beer, it's pretty nice actually. So take a bit of time and ponder over the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it, but I think it is about time that we have a taste of this one. I'm very, very curious about this for sure. So yeah, let me just line this back up again so that my OCD is happy, and we'll get stuck into it. So yeah, this one is the 5.1, it's a 5.1% Pilsner, the Lipidzana Pilsner from Duckpond Brewing in Kungsten up in Gothenburg on the Swedish west coast. My first lager beer from Duckpond. Love what these guys have been doing with the other styles though, so hopefully this is good. Let's get stuck in. Slanja, skål, cheers. Let's go for it. Yeah, I think that is pretty nice. Yeah, that is pretty solid actually. In my experience, this is quite similar to what you would get from the Czech, from, you know, like a Czech brew pub that's brewing a Pilsner. It's one of these, it has that little bit of that kind of more small, that kind of more small brewed kind of vibe to it, which is what you want. You do want a kind of small brewed beer. But yeah, the way that this goes together, I think, is very, very nice actually. So it gets a big thumbs up from me in that sense. I do like how this one goes about its business, and as I say, in terms of a Czech Pilsen, I think this one is pretty spot on. It's got a bit more of that kind of yeasty character to it. It's not the really kind of dry and crisp sort of thing you would expect from the German side of the style, I would say. But yeah, I think this one works out quite nicely. Yeah, for me, this is very, very nicely done, and I love this. I do love it that there's so many breweries now in Sweden having a go at these lager beers, and they're doing really good jobs. So I'm quite lucky here in Skåne, because one of my favourite breweries, Hylia Brewery. These guys for me are one of the best lager breweries in Sweden, but you know, that might be a bit of a false, I don't know, not a false statement, but a sort of maybe a presumption, I guess, because there's so many breweries now having a go at these lager beers and doing them very, very well. So I really like how I like that more breweries are turning their attention to lager beers now, because these styles have been underappreciated for far too long in my mind. But to have someone like Duckpond doing it, I think it's great. So hopefully we see the likes of, you know, Fermenterna and some of the other Gothenburg breweries do it. I know Dugas have done lager beers. They've done quite a few lager beers over the years, but I think, you know, with the amount of stuff that they've put out, it's quite difficult to keep up with exactly what Dugas have done. But yeah, more Gothenburg lagers could be quite interesting for sure. Stigbergs, of course, have been putting out that Ringu series, which has been quite interesting, and their regular Pilsner, I thought, was really nice. But yeah, this gets a thumbs up from me. Let's break the flavour down for you then and just describe it a bit more kind of succinctly. So yeah, straight away then, across the middle third and back third of your palate, you can feel that nice sort of wet, white bready base that you'll often get from these Pilsners, but you can feel there's a little bit of a kind of crackery note to it as well. It's got a lovely sort of crackery base. You've got a lovely crackery base in there, which I think is great. So yeah, the baseline of that beer is the baseline of this beer I think is very, very nice. So yeah, lovely sort of smooth, as we say, lovely kind of smooth, white bready, lovely sort of smooth, white bready backbone to it. So I really like how that goes together. You can feel it does have a little bit of that kind of floury thing that I was talking about. You know, the flour on the fresh bread crust. You certainly get a little bit of that in this beer, but there's a few bread crusty elements in there as well on the base of the beer. But when you go to either side of that middle third of your palate, there's a little bit more of a kind of bready thing in there. There's a little bit of a kind of bread crusty element, which I like. And yeah, you know, crisp, sort of more wet sort of white bread, you know, underneath with a little bit of grainy character. You can feel the sort of floury thing in there as well, and then a slightly thicker, but still quite dense white bready note sitting on top of that. And then either end of that middle third of your palate, there's a either end of that middle third of your palate, you've got a more kind of bread crusty note to the beer, which I quite like. But then sitting on top of that bready layer, you can feel there is a wee bit of the kind of brown sugary note. So there's a wee circle in the sort of middle of the middle third of your palate, and you can feel there's a wee bit of a kind of concentrated sort of McVitie's digestive biscuity note right in the middle of the tongue, and that's your boozy character, of course. And as you move further out from that centre, it gets a little bit more kind of sort of grainy and sweet in a sense. And if you go to the dead centre of your palate and then move towards the back of that middle third of your tongue, you can feel the kind of crisp elements. You can feel the really crisp elements of the Pilsner malt coming out of this beer, which I do like. And I'm questioning myself a little bit now. Because the crispness that you get out of this one does seem a little bit more German, if you like. It's a wee bit soft, so it could be a combination of Swedish Pilsner malt that's in this from Viking and then something else, maybe from the Czech Republic or whatever. So you do get a little bit of that kind of crispness there in the back of that middle third of your palate. But I like how that goes together. You can feel we'll look at the back third of your palate now. So when you move into that border region, you can feel there is a little bit of a bready build up in there, wee bit of bread crust, and you can feel some of the dryness, that kind of dry Pilsner malt element that's kind of sprinkled across that particular region of the palate. But as you move into the back third of your palate, you can feel you've got that sort of crisp, grainy kind of layer that I was talking about, the wet white bread, the kind of more thick and dry white bread, and then on top of that, you've got all the kind of yeasty elements as well. So yeah, I like how that goes together in this one. So yeah, the way that goes about its business is the way that that's going about its business is nice. So on top of that, as I say, you get that nice yeasty element. It's a more airy, slightly sweeter bready note that you get on the back of the palate too. So I like that about this one. So when you start at the back of your palate with this beer, you can feel the flavour is a little bit taller, and it just condenses down. The flavour just condenses down a little bit as you go further forward. So I like how that, I do like how that goes together in this one. So the flavour just condenses down a wee bit as you go forward, and then into the middle third of your palate, it's quite squashed together and a little bit crisp. So we'll see. But yeah, I think it goes together really nicely, this one, in that sense. The way that the malty and the yeasty side of the things in this beer are great. So yeah, dog's out. There we go. But yeah, on the hoppy side of things then, in the back corners of the palate, you do get a little bit of a kind of earthiness in there. As you move further forward, it gets a little bit herbal, and as you push forward towards the front corners of your palate, it starts to develop that big sort of spicy floral aromaticity. And that's the Czech Sats, of course. That big kind of spicy floral note is what you would expect from the Czech Sats in this one. So yeah, for me, pretty sure that it is that there. But around the front curve of the palate, it's definitely lighter and grassy, and for me, the grassiness has a nice little bit of a kind of zesty character to it. So yeah, the grassiness does have a wee bit of that kind of zip that you want from a Pilsner. But front third of your palate then, let's focus on the fruity side of things. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again, you get a little bit of a bready build up in there, a wee bit of a bread crusty note. Then the base of that front third of your palate, there's a nice kind of smooth, there is a nice bit of a sort of smooth white bready kind of character underneath. Then on top of that, you've got a nice kind of oily bubble. In there. And that's where all these kind of fruity juicy esters just roll their way out of the beer. So toward the back of that front third of your palate, you've got a wee bit of a more, you can feel a wee bit of a sort of concentrated citrusy element there for me. But as you move further forward, you start to get a little bit of that kind of sultana, you know, that dried white, green, grapey sort of thing out of it. You can feel that there. But you also get a wee touch of apricot, which is interesting. And then as you move into the front third of your palate, you're getting more of the kind of, you get more of a kind of peary sort of spicy appley sort of thing. And these are all flavours, of course, that you would expect from the kind of Pilsner style almost. So yeah, I would definitely say that about this beer. So yeah, the fruity notes on this one are quite nice and sort of spicy in a sense. So I think it all goes together quite well on the oily side of things. You've got a nice little bit of oiliness to it, and you have a sort of you know, it's just the fruit, the kind of oily side of the fruit lingers into the aftertaste with this beer. It gives you a wee bit of sweetness, but I think it's in keeping with everything. But you get a wee bit of dryness underneath it as well, which is also kind of interesting too. But this, for me, like I say, flavour profile wise, it is quite, you know, it is what you would expect from a Czech style Pilsner. It's got a little bit more of that kind of yeasty character to it. So for me, in terms of authenticity, this one does get a thumbs up. So I like that about this beer for sure. Yeah. So I think we can leave the flavour part at that and then go on to the mouthfeel. So for me, the mouthfeel is kind of as you would expect. It's quite a light-bodied beer, but it's maybe pushing towards the top end of light-bodied. You know, carbonation is quite smooth in this one, although it does have a degree of crispness, which you want from the style. And I'd say it's it's a nice, juicy, wet and slightly oily Pilsner, so I do like how that goes together. But on the hoppy side of things, I would say when we're talking about IBUs, I think this is maybe about a 20-25 IBU beer. I don't think it's 30. I don't think it's, you know, Pilsner Urquell is 30, and I don't know if that's considered a standard for Czech lager beers. But yeah, Pilsner Urquell is about 30 IBUs, and I don't think this one's too far away from that. But I don't think it's quite on the same level. I think 25 IBUs is probably a good count for this one. But yeah, on the fruity side of things, as we said, it's the dry, it's got a nice little bit of a dry fruity character to it, a little bit of oiliness in there, then smooth bready notes and a sweet, slightly sweet sort of brown sugary element to it. So I really like how all of that goes together in this beer. So it gets a thumbs up from me in that regard. It's got the right mouthfeel, nice kind of crispness to it, lovely smoothness, good little bit of hoppy bitterness, and then just a wee bit of the fruity character. It's everything you'd want from a Czech Pilsen. So absolutely. Yeah, for me, really nice beer, this one. So thumbs up to Duckpond. I'd love to see them do you know, a Munich Helles or something like that as well, or maybe a Märzen, you know, to have a go at the other lager styles. So maybe they're going to start doing that over the next wee while, so hopefully I can try a few of them. But I think we can leave it at that for this one. So yeah, this one was the Lipizzaner Pilsner, a 5.1% Pilsner lager beer from Duckpond Brewing in Kungsten in Gothenburg up on the Swedish west coast. So let's leave it there. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Duckpond Brewing, and as I say, we will return to these guys quite soon. Check out my social media, check out their social media, and I will see you guys in the next one. And I do recommend that you try this beer out if, like me, you enjoy a good Czech Pilsen. So, Slange, Skål, cheers, and see you guys very, very soon.